Allegrini, president of the National Italian American Foundation, also the honorary consul of the Republic of San Marino in Chicago. Robert has also been in the hospitality public relations industry for some of the top hotels around the world. You're also an author. Gosh, Robert, what haven't you done? Thank you so much for joining us today.
I haven't done the Little Italy podcast until now, so
well,
happy to be here.
Oh, it's such an honor because we so much want to tell our audience all about NIAF, because of course we call it NIAF here, much easier. And because lots of folks within the Italian community, particularly here in Los Angeles, right, might not exactly know all the incredible work that you're doing for us as Italian Americans, and that bridge, right? You're pretty much that bridge between Italy and the US. Tell us about it, would you?
Yes, it's my mission to change that and to ensure that more people do know about the foundation and the wonderful work that it does. And it really is the premier Italian American organization that has as its missions the protection, preservation, and promotion of the Italian heritage in the United States, and also serving as a bridge between the United States and Italy. So each year we give out almost $1 million in scholarships, in grants, in heritage travel to Italy, and we serve as truly a link between the United States and Italy, working with the Italian embassy, also working with the Italian American congressional delegation to ensure that the voice of the nation's 20 million Italian Americans is heard in our nation's capital.
That travel program, it's not for somebody like me who's been there many times, right? Tell us about that.
Sure, yes. No, that's really one of our signature programs. It's called the Voyage of Discovery. And each year we take 50 young Italian American students who have never been to Italy before on their first time trip to Italy. It's an all expense paid 2-week trip to Italy. And right now, the way we are selecting those students is through our affiliate organization program. NIAF has affiliate organizations across the country, and each affiliate organization gets to sponsor one student on the Voyage of Discovery program. So literally, these kids are coming from across the country on this wonderful first-time trip to Italy to discover their heritage.
So much also that you do is also about the image of the Italian and the Italian American, right? We've all seen films where, gosh, it wasn't too long ago where there was just pretty much one role that so many of us as Italians and Americans had, right, in the film industry. That's changed. Right. We're now making films. We are now, directing them, producing them. And we have various roles in, the TV and film industry. Could you talk about that?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the reasons that has changed is as a result of the efforts of NIAF and other organizations like the Commission of Social Justice for the Sons of Italy, who have fought those battles over the years and have allowed us to get where we are now. But still, I think that our own people sometimes have been conditioned by what they see in Hollywood. So one of my tasks is, as the president of the foundation, is really to get the Italian Americans to have a true appreciation of the full richness of their culture, which is so incredibly rich. I mean, in every realm of human existence, the Italians have made huge contributions in the past and continue to do so in the present. So one of my goals is really, and through our grant program, to empower those Italian Americans who are telling stories through books, through plays, through movies, through websites about the full richness of our heritage.
I've interviewed quite a few scientists who are from Italy and now here in the United States who've made tremendous impacts, right, on industries here and also in Italy. So, I mean, there's so much, right? We know about, of course, Italian culture and food, and you travel there and the richness of the different communities and villages there, right? But to your point, we are involved in scientific endeavors, and there's just so much. And for all Italian Americans, for people in the U.S. to know more about those contributions, it's critical.
I always joke that the Italian nonne, they taught their grandkids very well la cucina and la chiesa, the kitchen and the church. And so Italian Americans of, the third or fourth generation, they still know the family recipes and they know the religious traditions, and those are both critically important. But there's so much more to our heritage than just the cuisine, which is wonderful. We know we eat better than anyone else, and the church. So my mission is to get us to understand the significance of Italian contributions to architecture, to music, to art, to design, and as you were rightfully pointing out, to science, to manufacturing, to technology, where Italy is in the lead in all of those realms. So there's a lot to talk about, to brag about, honestly, as part of our Italian heritage.
Yeah, about that no thing. I will tell you the cooking one. I am probably the only Italian where it just sort of went right over my head, right? My sister, my cousins, my relatives. And when I was younger, it would be like, get out of the kitchen. You're a mess. So to this day, I really try. I'm doing my best. I know the recipes, but the church thing I got loud and clear. But the cooking one, it sort of passed me by. Go ahead.
We have conquered the world with our cuisine. It has become the world's favorite cuisine, and so obviously that is something we all know about, and that's a wonderful thing, which I fully support. But there's so much more to it, and that is part of the mission of the foundation, is to get young Italian Americans to know more about their heritage, less the Hollywood version of it, more the real version.
Yeah. We're going to circle back to a lot of that, but I want to talk about you, Robert, because you've led quite an interesting life. The president of NIAF is quite an accomplishment, quite an honor. I know that you've worked with NIAF in the past as well. Let's hear about you. Where are you phoning in from or zooming in from? Talk about your career and your background.
Sure.
Being Italian, please.
I actually, despite my backdrop, which is of the Victor Emmanuel Monument in Rome, which is one of my favorite buildings in the world, I'm actually calling in from suburban Chicago, where I reside when I am not in Washington, which is where our NIAF headquarters is. And so I am a Chicago native, and was fortunate enough to get into the hospitality industry through a surreptitious route, and got into the public relations end of hospitality, which is so much fun, and spent 30 years in hospitality, public relations, first with Regent Hotels, then with Swiss Hotels, then the last 20 years with Hilton, 10 of which were spent as the vice president of public relations for all the Hilton properties in North and South America. And it was a fun job, but also a very stressful one, because, as I like to say, the full range of human activity occurs in hotels. So if you can think about somebody doing something crazy, they do it in hotels. And so all of the problems from all of these hotels all over the hemisphere also wound up on my desk. So I have to tell you, being president of NIAF is less stressful and even more fun. And I've been at it now for 2 years. As you rightfully pointed out, I've been involved with NIAF going back, actually, I hate to tell you how long, but back to the late 1980s, when I was executive director of the Joint Civic Committee of Italian Americans, which is the umbrella group of all the Italian organizations in Chicago. And then I became an area coordinator, a regional vice president for NIAF, a board member of NIAF, a board officer, and now finally president, which is a full-time job. I like to describe myself as a professional Italian, one of a handful of professional Italians in the country. And I regret that I only have one waistline to sacrifice for the Italian because it is definitely an occupational hazard. You eat very well in this role.
Yeah, I think you look just fine. I mean, I saw you not recently, right, in Beverly Hills at Il Fornaio restaurant. We were welcoming our new Italian consul, who is lovely. And I think you're doing just fine, but in that area, right? But what better person for this job than someone with a background in publicity and putting out fires at hotels, as you would say, probably literally in some cases.
Yes, but literally in several cases, yes.
Right? Because that's what this job, I think, really calls for. Because, even Italians throughout the U.S. are very different. I'm originally from New Jersey. It's a different kind of Italian American there than it is out here in Los Angeles. I know that you have a large group membership, I should say, back east. And out here in L.A., we'd love to focus. I'd love to help you focus on getting people involved in Los Angeles. Tell me a little bit about that. How we can get folks in my area involved.
Yes, you're absolutely right that that California in general is an area that we really need to spend more time cultivating, because there is a large Italian population in California, not just in Los Angeles, but also obviously in San Francisco and in other parts of the state as well. And we just really dipped our toe back into California with the event that you had mentioned, which was a welcome for the new Consul General in Los Angeles. But we want to get back to having a number of events in California throughout the year. We have one of our board members who now resides in California part of the year, and that's Aurelio De Laurentiis, who comes from the famous De Laurentiis filmmaking family. And he just purchased a beautiful home in Beverly Hills and has said that he would like to start having some NIAF events in the Beverly Hills area that focus on film and the contribution of Italians in film. And so we hope to begin having those types of events in California before too long, and also to have regional galas in California as well.
Yeah, which is very important because you, as you said, you give away nearly $1 million, if not more, every
Right.
year. That's tough to do. I mean, that's a large order, right?
Yes.
So
yes, and you know, it is a very large order. I don't know that there's any other Italian American organization that comes close to that level of giving.
Let's talk about some other areas that NIAF is involved in, if you will, politically, for example, if you want to get into a little bit of that.
Sure.
Would you please go ahead?
Yes, absolutely. So obviously we are nonpartisan and at the same time bipartisan, because we have a range of supporters in the political world that spans from Nancy Pelosi on the left to Mike Pompeo on the right. As long as they are proud Italian Americans, and we are happy to accept them as NIAF supporters. But we work very closely with the Italian American congressional delegation, which is comprised of all of those congressmen and senators of Italian descent, of which there are close to 40 right now, starting with our Speaker of the House. Everyone knows, of course, that Nancy Pelosi was of Italian descent, but also her successor, Kevin McCarthy, is half Italian and actually has his maternal grandfather that was born in Italy. And I just watched a video of him meeting the president of Italy when he was there just a couple of weeks ago. And the first thing he told the president of Italy was about his own grandfather having been born and raised in Italy and coming to the United States. And almost a century after his arrival, his grandson was now the Speaker of the House of the United States. So another wonderful Italian-American success story. But we work with the Italian-American congressional delegations on issues that are of importance to the Italian community. One of which, of course, is the maintenance of the Columbus Day holiday, which I hope all of your listeners are in agreement with. And so that is just an example of the kinds of issues that we are working with the Italian-American congressional delegation on. But they're a wonderful group of people, and it's so nice to see all these Congress people getting along with each other strictly on the basis of their Italian heritage. They may be definitely in opposition to each other on most issues, but the fact that they have a common heritage links them together and brings them all as friends to all of our events.
You mentioned Christopher Columbus and Columbus Day. What are you doing in particular to keep that going, keep that alive, and to sort of quiet the noise around that?
Sure. Well, one of the things that we are doing is taking the battle where it needs to be fought onto college campuses, where this horrible indoctrination against Columbus is taking place. And last year we sponsored a series of lectures on college campuses all over the country, from Florida to Princeton, where we had a speaker, several speakers actually, one of which is Mary Graybar, who's really one of the foremost authorities both on Columbus and on the gentleman who began the whole anti-Columbus campaign, who is a charlatan historian by the name of Howard Zinn, and she wrote the book Debunking Howard Zinn. So she was taking this lecture onto the college campuses, and through our NIAF on Campus program, we set up lectures using the Italian clubs and these various campuses as the conduit to making those lectures happen. And obviously we support and continue to support ensuring that states around the country continue to celebrate Columbus Day through the political means at our disposal, through using the Italian American congressional delegation and the various state caucuses that also are comprised of Italian Americans.
Now, over in DC, you also now have an Italian American museum there, don't you?
That is correct. It is
Tell us.
not one that we sponsor ourselves per se, but it is definitely a museum that we work with, and it's a wonderful museum that focuses actually on Italian American immigration to Washington, D.C. Not many people know that there was an Italian American community in Washington, D.C. A lot of the Italians that came to Washington were craftsmen that worked on the beautiful monuments around the city and all the monumental buildings of the city. So that museum, which is one of several around the country, I mean, you have a wonderful Italian American museum right there in Los Angeles, which is a great jewel, who I would encourage all of your local California listeners to go and check out, because it's really a wonderful museum, but one of literally a dozen around the country that focus on Italian American immigration to the respective areas.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, I will tell you, because you and I met because of Mariana Gatto, and she is the one who is behind the Italian American Museum here in Los Angeles. It's a tremendous museum, so much history there I just did not know about. I'm very grateful for that museum, and those traveling, like you said, to DC and elsewhere can check out those museums there. But the work that she's done here is incredible. I know you've attended, right?
I have. It was a really wonderful experience for me. I got to see not only the standing exhibits, but the rotating exhibit that's wonderful that's there right now on Pinocchio. So it was a very beneficial experience to me, and I think it's really it leads the way amongst these various regional museums around the country. And there are, as I say, a number of them right here in Chicago, where I am, in New Orleans, in New York, obviously. They really are scattered about the country and all worth visiting.
Talk about you growing up, would you please? What kind of Italian household did you grow up in? What was it like? Was it a festive environment, lots of food? Like we all expect that, right?
Not at all in that sense, honestly. But part of the reason is that I was an only child, but my mother came to the U.S. She was born in Italy, but came over when she was 7 from Lucca, which is a beautiful city in Tuscany.
Oh, yeah.
And then my father was born in Chicago, also of Italian descent. His family was from Piemonte at the base of the Alps. But amongst themselves, they always spoke in English. And to me, they spoke in English, even though both my parents spoke perfect Italian. So much so that before I was born, my mother was actually the secretary to the Italian Consul General in Chicago and worked at the consulate for many years. But I actually had to go off to high school to learn Italian, and thank God I lived in a fairly Italian American suburb of Chicago where they offered 4 years of Italian in high school. So I was able to take 4 years there, do a summer while I was in college at the University for Foreigners in Perugia, and then was offered a graduate fellowship to study foreign affairs in Florence for a year. So right after I finished college, I did a year in Florence to perfect my Italian, which I would say is not really perfect yet, but certainly well enough to be understood. But it was a wonderful upbringing in an Italian neighborhood of Chicago, the Chicago suburbs. And so I have always been very proud of my heritage since an early age, and really have done all that I could, even growing up, to immerse myself in the culture. And then, as I said, in my early 20s, started getting involved in the Italian community in Chicago. And it's been a wonderful ride. I'm one that believes the world would be a better place if only it was a little bit more Italian. I mean, we'd all eat better, drink better, dress better, be more musical, be more artistic, be more passionate, lest we forget that, Romeo, Casanova, Valentino, they were all Italians. So we bring a lot to the table, and I think we make the American country a better one because of our presence.
Well, you met my husband, right? He's fully Polish. And I like to remind, it comes from a very quiet family. My family was not so quiet. Everything was a conversation around anything, whether it was making meatballs or putting on a tablecloth. But my parents were fully immersed in the Italian culture, particularly the cultural part, because they would take me to New York. We would go to the opera. When my family moved to Florida, they were very involved in the opera. That came from their Italian upbringing, right? Because it was immersed in them. But initially, marrying someone who was not Italian, he would often look puzzled, because we are a very passionate people in all ways. And I want people to understand that about us. That when we take something on, whether it's about work, friendship, anything, we put everything into it, right?
I think it's one of the most endearing qualities of being Italian is the passion that we put into everything that we do and the humanity. I mean, the Italians are the most humane of people and the most human of people. If you look back in the history, one of the stories that I'm proudest of is the role of Italy and of Italians during the Holocaust, when other countries were turning over their Jews voluntarily. The Italians could not counteranswer, even though they were allied with the Germans, they could never support turning over innocent people. And so the Italians, to a person, really, not only the civilians, but even the military and the Italian diplomatic service that were allied with the Nazis, would not turn over their Jews, and not a single Italian Jew was turned over to the Nazis until after the surrender of Italy in 1943. And that is just one example of the great humanity that the Italians evidence in everything that they do.
Yeah, beautiful. So tell us a little bit about membership to NIAF, would you? Because there's different levels. And I love that magazine that we get. It's fantastic. I thumb through it. It's on my coffee table, and whenever it comes in, I get quite excited about it. But other than the magazine, there's so much to membership at NIAF. Would you please? And then I want to get into some of the galas that you put on.
Sure, absolutely. So we do make it very easy for you to become a member. We have memberships from $100 all the way up to $2,500 with varying benefits. But we do have a full range of benefits, even for the $100 member. There are so many wonderful benefits that you get by being a NIAF member. The latest, which I'll give your listeners a little insight into something that we haven't made public quite yet, but we're about to have a partnership with ITA Airways, which is the successor airline to Alitalia, and where our members will get 10% off the prevailing rates. And that is just one of a dozen different examples that I could give you of substantive benefits that you get as a member of NIAF. And then we do not oblige you, as other Italian organizations do, to do much else other than become a member and be proud of your heritage and partake in all of our social media, of which we have a huge following of over 200,000 through our social media channels. But we are looking for those proud Italian Americans that want to do something to demonstrate their pride in their heritage and really to help others celebrate it. Because as I say, the membership revenue goes to all of our programs, to the grant program, to the scholarship program, to the Voyage of Discovery program. So whether the money that you are contributing is as a $100 member or a $2,500 member, it's all going for a very good cause.
Let's talk about some of the galas. Now, I know that there's the gala, right, that you do generally in October over in DC.
In Washington, correct. And this will be our 48th this year.
Wow. Talk to me about that, because I know that you have, not you personally, but well, maybe you personally, NIAF has sort of rubbed elbows with presidents and some incredible luminaries. If you could talk to us about that too.
Absolutely. And so that's one of the really hallmarks of NIAF, is this big gala that we have every year in Washington, D.C., where every president since Jimmy Carter has attended, and where we have honored literally every major Italian American, barring a couple in terms of their celebrity status. We've done everyone from Frank Sinatra to Sophia Loren, Italian personalities like Roberto Benigni and Gianni Agnelli. Really, the whole gambit of major political figures, sports figures, Joe DiMaggio, and business people like Lee Iacocca, Rudy Giuliani, and the list goes on and on. Certainly for actors, everyone from Pacino to Sylvester Stallone, and on and on. Last year, we amongst the honorees, we had former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Giada De Laurentiis. So there aren't many that have escaped us thus far. We're still going after Lady Gaga. We haven't gotten to Lady Gaga as of yet, but she's one of the few that we haven't been able entice quite yet to be one of our honorees. But the event is a huge event. It is 1,000 people, many of them coming from Italy itself. This year, we're hopeful that we will have the Italian Prime Minister Meloni, who has expressed some desire to attend our event. And let's hope we can get the President of the United States as well, whose wife, as I'm sure your listeners know, is of Italian descent herself, our first Italian-American First Lady.
Isn't that beautiful? Back to Lady Gaga for a moment, if you don't mind. If you want to get to Joanne, that is her name, and you probably know that.
Yes.
Go through her parents. We'll talk about that a little later. I'm not saying I can get her. I just know people who have managed to go around. It's her parents, right? They're the Italian, and they could probably get her ear. But NIAF will, I'm sure. We're calling out to you, Lady Gaga, but I'm sure that one of these days we'll be able to get to her. How magnificent! Because that's exciting. That so many have been present at this gala. That's hard to do, but it also go ahead. It also shows the level of respect.
Yes, that's what I was going to speak to. The only time, as far as I know, that both presidential candidates and both vice presidential candidates were on the same stage at the same time was when Ronald Reagan was president. I think it would have been 1984. We had President Reagan, Vice President Bush, and then his challengers, Walter Mondale at the time, and Geraldine Ferraro, who, of course, was the first Italian-American candidate for a vice president. But it is a tremendous sign of respect for our organization and for our community that we were the only organization to be able to ever claim that they had all four candidates on the same stage at the same event at the same time.
I know you're bipartisan, but do you get involved, or will you get involved, even ever so slightly, in the presidential candidate who recently announced that he will be running on the Republican ticket? Is that something you would do, or no?
Certainly not officially, no, because we are indeed nonpartisan. If you were to ask me, am I proud that there is a presidential candidate who's got all 8 of his great-grandparents, because I just saw this the other day, born in Italy, and so is 100% of Italian extraction? I am absolutely very proud. But I would say the same thing if Andrew Cuomo were running for president as well. I would be very happy to see a president of Italian descent from either party.
I will say, as Italians, we do stick together, but we have to remember that and support one another always, no matter what it is, because there's always common ground for all Italians to find, generally over, a plate of spaghetti. But you know what I'm saying? There's always common ground that we all have in all areas, being Italian, the different organizations. I think that's a wonderful thing, because I know NIAF.
I saw it firsthand the other day when we had a dinner and we had sitting around the same table Nancy Pelosi and Steve Scalise, for example, who you wouldn't see at the same table if it were not for they were breaking bread as Italian Americans, and they were both very happy to be there. So just an example of the point you're making, that our heritage is a unifying factor. And thank God that people love Italy to the extent that they do, and it really is something we can all be proud of, because I'm sure your Polish husband loves Italy as much as you do.
Yeah, almost more. I mean, I'm telling you, whenever we're planning a trip, I'm like, where would you like to go? Italy. I said, we just got back from there a month ago. Try somewhere else. That's all he wants to go. He wants to make sure we hit every region. He adores my family. My family's from the Avellino region, and they were very kind and warm to us. And he loves to go back, as I said, probably even more than I do. So we call him the IBM, Italian by marriage. So
we will be going to Italy as a board of the National Italian American Foundation next month. And we'll be near Avellino because a group of us are going to Naples after our main trip, which will be to Emilia-Romagna, because each year NIAF adopts a different region of Italy as our region of honor and helps to promote that region. And Emilia-Romagna has Bologna as its capital, and so it's a wonderful gastronomic region. The gastronomic heartland of a gastronomically obsessed country. So we're looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to showing our solidarity with that region, which just has had the most horrendous flooding of this past month. It was the worst flooding in this century. And so we have been collecting funds. And that's another thing that the National Italian American Foundation does, is whenever there is a disaster in Italy, as there too often is in terms of earthquakes and the like, we are always collecting funds to share with our Italian brothers and sisters and show our solidarity and show our support. So we've been doing that just recently for the flooding in Emilia-Romagna as well.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I knew that, and I thought I'm just glad that you made sure to mention that through our interview. Is there anything else you want people to know, particularly non-Italians, right? Because this is something that non-Italians can also become members of, right?
Absolutely. You know, the Italiophiles, like your husband, are just as committed to supporting Italian heritage and culture as Italian Americans themselves, sometimes even more so. So absolutely, we want to showcase the best of Italy and the best of Italian America, and you know, they are different. You know, we have developed in several ways our own culture, our own cuisine here in the United States. But my God, you know, there's so much worth celebrating in the Italian American heritage and culture as well. Now, you know, we've started the festival season, and there's these wonderful Italian street fairs all over the United States. And I encourage all your listeners to really get back in touch with their heritage, and for those that aren't of Italian descent, to really engage and enjoy the wonderful food and music and camaraderie that come around from those festivals.
You know, it's interesting. I often run into Italian Americans who have not been to Italy. And I'm a little stunned, and I know it can be expensive, but if you plan well in advance and become a member, and you can get that 10% off as well, yes. I think it's imperative, because it's one thing to look at it in a book and to celebrate locally with your family, but to go there, particularly if you can check out the region that you're from, right? That's a bonus. Is a totally different experience. And do you partner with any travel companies as well?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we do. We partner with Perillo Travel, which is the leading tour operator to Italy, and has wonderful trips, organized trips and individual trips. And as a NIAF member, you also get a discount through Perillo. If you're booking your trip, you can do it directly through the NIAF website. And that's something that I would encourage all of your listeners to look into too, because you could really both help the foundation and help yourself by booking a trip through Perillo at our NIAF website. But beyond that, to your earlier point, next year has been proclaimed by the Italian government as the year of roots tourism. The Italian government wants all of those of Italian descent to return to their areas of origin. So for yourself, it would be to Avellino, and really immerse themselves in the land of their forefathers. And so there is going to be a huge promotional push throughout the United States that NIAF hopes to be a part of, to enable all of the Italian Americans to realize that they would have a wonderful experience by returning to the land of their forefathers and seeing where their grandparents and at this point great-grandparents came from. So we are definitely encouraging that, and really, if you grow up gaining your perception of Italy from movies in Hollywood, what you will see actually there will be radically different. And so I encourage everyone to actually go and see the real Italy, and not the one that has been fabricated by Hollywood, for sure.
Yeah. And please give a shout out to your website, how people can learn more and join. I really want people to make sure they join. Again, it's quite reasonable. And also the young people, how they can get involved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can join NIAF by just simply logging on to our website, which is NIAF.org. And you'll see the full range of membership opportunities and their corresponding benefits. But then you'll see all the other things that we do as a foundation. And there are so many worthwhile programs. If you are a young listener, we have a program called NIAF on Campus, where we support Italian clubs at universities around the country. We give them funding to have activities for their Italian clubs, and we bring in the leaders of these Italian clubs to our annual gala in Washington, so as to get them more immersed and involved in the Italian community. So we really do offer programs. If you are at any stage in your life, you will find something to appeal to you when you take a look at the NIAF website. So I'm glad you mentioned that, and I encourage everyone to spend a couple of minutes on that website and really see what interests you. We're a wonderful organization which does a lot of great work, and I really hope that we do get many more members out of this wonderful opportunity to talk on your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that'll be lovely. Please, you could. That's my contribution.
Well,
highlighting.
your contribution is great because we need so many more people like yourself that have these vehicles that afford us the opportunity to talk about our heritage. I mean, you've had so many wonderful guests on in the past that I have to say, as far as I'm concerned, you are doing a great credit to your heritage, and what you do reflects great luster on all of us. So grazie mille.
Yeah, grazie very much, very, very much. Because, like I said, that's my contribution. I can tell other people's stories.
Tremendous.
And thank you. There's so many wonderful stories to tell. So many of them. I mean, I could do them all day, which I'm happy to do, by the way, because I'm so proud of being an Italian American myself, and I know that my parents, we lived it day and night. And everything they did was always with, Italy and Italian behind everything, whether it was they were part of the Major League Baseball, they used to try and, with Italian clubs and just whatever they did. And I feel like in my own way, this is my way of giving back to my parents and my kids too. They love it. So,
your parents raised you tremendously well, so you should be proud of them as well.
I sure am. So thank you so much. This has just been wonderful talking to you. I look forward to getting together, if I can, with Mr. De Laurentiis and all the other wonderful people who are doing great work here. Marcella, of course, has done such marvelous work, and anyone just to promote NIAF even more so here in Los Angeles.
We really want to have a stronger presence in California, and we're going to start with Los Angeles, I can guarantee you.
Yeah, it would be my pleasure. A little side note to Mr. De Laurentiis. By marriage, my fifth grade teacher was Mrs. De Laurentiis through marriage. And she would always talk about the famous producer director all the time. We hardly learned anything. It would always be about that
wonderful
family
of all people, including Jada, who is a niece of Aurelio. And Aurelio, our board member, in addition to being the producer of his own film studio, is also the owner of the Naples soccer team, which just won the Italian championship. So he is on cloud nine, and we all have to do a shout out to the Napoli soccer team for the wonderful job that they did this season.
Magnificent. That is absolutely wonderful. Well, what a wonderful note to end on. That was just terrific. Robert Allegrini. Please, people, go to NIAF.org. Become a member. Get involved. Even if you're an IBM, like my husband, there's so much that we can learn, from arts to science to moving it forward, right, with our Italian heritage for the next generation, right? Like my kids.
Exactly right. While we respect the past and we honor it, we're always focused on the future at NIAF.
Right. Thank you so much. And everybody, you can find our podcast with Robert Allegrini on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. And then it is also as an audio podcast. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on Amazon, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you get your audio or video podcast. Just look us up, Little Italy podcast and Little Italy of LA podcast. And also we simulcast it on Deborah Cobalt Live. So look up Robert Allegrini and myself, and you'll find our show. And pass it along to your friends, too. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. Thank you, Robert, and everybody that you work with who made sure that this interview happened.
My pleasure. And thank you not only to yourself, but also to all your viewers and listeners. I appreciate it greatly.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all next time. Ciao, ciao.